The silence in the apartment was unfamiliar, not the peaceful kind, but the eerie, unsettling quiet that made the hair on the back of my neck rise. I stood at the doorway for a moment longer than usual, keys still in my hand, staring at the half-open bedroom door. The sun was setting, casting a pale orange glow across the hardwood floor, but everything else felt cold. Her shoes weren't by the door. Her coat wasn't on the hook. Her phone, the one she never left behind, was gone. For a few seconds, I thought maybe she had just gone out for groceries. But something was off. The bathroom door stood ajar, lights off. The fridge buzzed quietly. Nothing felt lived in. And worst of all, the apartment smelled like nothing. No perfume. No faint trail of her shampoo. It was like she had vanished and scrubbed herself out of the world on her way out. 2 years we had lived here. 2 years of building a routine, of shared takeout meals, laughter echoing in the kitchen, arguments over dishes and toothpaste caps. And now just silence. I walked through the apartment slowly, noticing things I hadn't before. The empty jewelry stand on the dresser, her favorite mug missing from the dish rack, her passport, the one I jokingly called her escape card, was no longer in the drawer I knew she kept it in. I sat on the couch and stared at the blank TV screen. My hands trembled. I called her, straight to voicemail. I texted, "Where are you?" No response. I checked her social media. No post for the past 2 days, which was strange. She usually posted something, even just a story. I called again. And again. Nothing. It wasn't like her to disappear. She wasn't impulsive. She planned things. Lists, reminders, alarms for everything. If she had wanted to leave, she would have said something. Wouldn't she? I barely slept that night. 3 days later. The police were polite but unconcerned. "She's an adult," the officer had said with a shrug. "There's no sign of foul play. Maybe she just needed space." Space? After 2 years? Without a note? Without a text? "I know her," I said, gripping the edge of the desk at the station. "She wouldn't do this." The officer raised an eyebrow. "How well do you really know her?" That question echoed in my head for days. I called every hospital, visited local shelters, just in case. I walked through the city with a printed photo of her, asking strangers like some desperate movie cliché. No one had seen her. No answers. Just blank stares and sympathetic eyes. I searched our emails, her laptop, clues, anything. What I found was chilling. She had booked a flight. One way. Destination, Santorini. Date, 2 days before she disappeared. She had used her work email to confirm the reservation, the same email her boss used, the same man I had met at her company events, the man who once called me a lucky guy, with that smug smile I now recognize in hindsight. I called the airline and pretended to be her brother. They confirmed she had checked in. She wasn't missing. She had left me, and she hadn't gone alone. 1 week later, with help from a friend in the police department, I managed to pull footage from the security cameras at the airport and a local grocery store near our apartment. There she was, casually rolling a suitcase, sunglasses on, laughing at something or someone. The camera panned slightly. There he was, my boss, my girlfriend. Together, my stomach dropped. It wasn't just betrayal. It was deception at the deepest level. She had been planning this, leaving without a word, leaving me in the dark, scrambling, crying, thinking something had happened to her, and she had been sipping cocktails on a beach. I sat in the dark that night, apartment still half empty, and stared at her side of the bed. Fury burned in my chest, but not the screaming kind, the cold, surgical kind, the kind that plans. If she thought she could erase me from her life so easily, if he thought he could have her, humiliate me, and walk away untouched, they were both wrong. I would make sure of it. The days after discovering the truth were blurry, a mixture of rage, disbelief, and a painful clarity that settled in like a slow-working poison. I went through the motions of work, barely speaking to anyone. I avoided eye contact, avoided small talk, avoided mirrors. But behind my blank expression, a storm raged. I didn't want closure. I didn't want an apology. I wanted consequences. The first step was to remove her from my space, mentally and physically. Her closet, still half full, felt like an open wound. Her shoes mocked me every time I passed the door. I boxed up everything. Dresses, heels, perfumes, even the silly mug she always used. I didn't throw them away. No, that would be too simple. I drove to a local shelter and donated every item in her name. The volunteer thanked me with warm eyes. I forced a smile. Step 2, the apartment we had chosen together, celebrated signing the lease with cheap wine and pizza. I couldn't live in those memories. So I sold it, below market value, fast. Cash buyer. No looking back. Then came the harder part, dealing with him. My boss, Daniel Mason. He wasn't just some corporate drone. He was the kind of man who liked to flaunt power. Designer suits, private memberships, endless networking. The kind of man who thought consequences were for other people. He was also untouchable on the surface. But I had connections. Not many, but deep ones. I need a favor, I said. I met with an old friend, Alex, someone who owed me from back in college. He worked in law enforcement now, not frontline, but high enough to nudge systems. I showed him the footage to Flight Info and explained the situation with deliberate calm. She disappeared without a trace. I said, no contact, no messages. I genuinely thought something had happened to her. Alex watched me quietly. You filed a missing person report, right? I nodded. I want to file something else now. A kidnapping report. He raised an eyebrow. You think he took her against her will? I looked him dead in the eyes. That's what I thought at the time. I still don't know otherwise. What I do know is she was vulnerable, and he abused his position. Alex sighed. You know this won't stick, right? It'll be messy. I'm not looking for a conviction, I said. Just a storm cloud over his perfect little vacation. He studied me for a moment. You realize this could hurt your career too, right? I'm already bleeding. I said. He made the call. 3 days later. Daniel Mason's account were frozen. Pending investigation. Corporate compliance was alerted. The company began to panic. Not because they believed he'd done something criminal, but because allegations were bad enough. They returned from their vacation early. I watched the live tracker of their flight. I imagined the scene in first class. Champagne denied, tension rising, phones buzzing. They landed 2 days later, back in the city. She messaged me for the first time. Can we talk? I stared at her name on my screen. Talk? You vanished. You lied. You let me suffer, thinking you were gone or hurt or dead. And now that your little escape fantasy has exploded, you want to talk? No. I didn't answer. Instead, I watched from the shadows. I knew her well. I knew where she'd go. I tracked her to the office. I saw them walking in separately, tense, eyes down, trying to pretend nothing had happened. But people talk. And whispers had already started. I smiled. This was only the beginning. 2 days after their return, silence wrapped around me like a fog. She hadn't tried again. No second message. No calls. No desperate apologies. Just that 1 week attempt. Can we talk? As if those 3 words could unravel what she'd done. But I wasn't waiting anymore. I was watching. From a distance. At the office. The shift was almost imperceptible at first. People stared a second longer, laughed a little less. Daniel moved differently now. The confidence was still there, but it wavered in the quiet moments in the corners of rooms. The news of a police report, especially one involving the word kidnapping, didn't stay quiet for long, especially not in our corporate world. He wasn't suspended. Not yet, but his projects were being reviewed, and that was enough to make him nervous. And her? She didn't come back to the office at all. She had become a ghost in our shared professional world, just as she had in our home. I knew why. I had burned every bridge behind her. Flashback. The disappearance. I remembered the day she left. The morning had been normal. She kissed me on the cheek, said she was going to meet a friend for brunch, said she might stop by the office, said she'd call later. She never did. By evening, I tried her phone 4 times. By midnight, I was calling hospitals. By the next afternoon, I filed a missing person report. I remembered the sick feeling in my gut, the fear, the sleepless nights, the way I questioned myself. Was I controlling? Did I do something wrong? Had she been unhappy? But the truth had shattered that guilt. She hadn't been in danger. She had just chosen someone else. Back to present. I saw her again 5 days later, by accident or maybe not. She was outside our old building, standing on the sidewalk, staring up at the window of our former apartment. Her hair was pulled back, no makeup, no pretenses. She looked tired, broken even. I stayed in my car across the street and watched. When she reached for her phone and began typing, mine buzzed a moment later. Why did you sell everything? I stared at the message. No greeting, no apology, just that. Because everything I had was built for us, and we don't exist anymore. She didn't reply. She stood there for a moment longer, then walked away. I exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of closure press against my lungs. It wasn't peace, but it was something close. A turning point. I wasn't the victim anymore. At work, rumors swirled louder now. Daniel was still trying to act like nothing happened, but the whispers were louder than his voice in meetings. HR had begun to quietly interview people. Nobody knew exactly what was going on, but words like ethics and misconduct and power imbalance started appearing in the same sentences. One afternoon, I got called in. We understand you had personal involvement in the situation, the HR rep said gently. I nodded. We were engaged, lived together. She disappeared for over a week. I thought something had happened. The rep scribbled something. And now... She's back, I said, but it's not the same. The conversation didn't go much further. They weren't trying to punish me. They were trying to protect the company. And Daniel was becoming a liability. It was working. She reached out again. A voicemail this time. Her voice cracked in the middle. I know I don't deserve a reply. But I made a mistake. A huge one. And I hate that you found out like this. I wasn't thinking. I just wanted something different. Something stupid and temporary. And I destroyed everything. She paused. I saw you from across the street. I don't blame you for not coming out. But I miss you. I miss us. I played the voicemail 3 times. Not because I missed her, but because I wanted to remember the sound of regret. It was a kind of justice. Final scene of the chapter. That night, I went out alone. I sat at a bar we used to visit together, ordered the drink she always ordered, smiled when the bartender recognized me. You alone? He asked. I nodded. Not really, I said, just with old memories. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something shift inside me, not healing, exactly, but power. And I was just getting started. Morning sunlight cut through the curtains like a blade. I stood in my new apartment, smaller than the last one, but mine. Everything inside it was different. No traces of her, no shared memories, no remnants of the life we once built. It was cold, minimal, but honest, a reflection of who I'd become. The house we once shared? Gone. I closed a deal with a real estate agent within a week of her return. The buyers were a young couple expecting their first child. They loved the fireplace, the hardwood floors, the same features we used to dream about renovating. They didn't know the story behind the walls, and I didn't tell them. I'd erased our past from that place. The furniture? Donated. The photos? Deleted. The engagement ring? Pawned. I watched people online argue whether revenge brought peace. The truth? It brought clarity. And clarity was worth every ounce of pain. Back at the office, the silence had turned into tension. Daniel was summoned into an executive meeting. The glass conference room didn't offer privacy. Everyone could see him pacing, raising his voice, sitting with his hands clenched in frustration. By the time he emerged, his jaw was locked tight, his eyes scanning the floor. He didn't look at me. Word came down hours later. Daniel had been relieved of his duties pending investigation. Not fired, not officially, just suspended. Without pay. His accounts remained frozen. His hands were tied, just like I planned. The message I didn't expect. Late one night, another message appeared. From her. But different this time. You win. Are you happy? I stared at it, unblinking. She thought this was about winning? I typed back slowly. There's no winning here. Only consequences. 10 minutes passed. She was typing. Then she stopped, then typing again. Finally, you're right. I didn't think. I didn't care. I just wanted to feel something again. I hated the routine. I hated feeling invisible. The honesty stung more than the betrayal, but it explained everything. She hadn't left because of Daniel. She left because she was empty, and hurting someone who loved her made her feel powerful. It made her feel seen. Flashback, the early days. 2 years ago, she had been everything. We decorated the apartment with our first joint paycheck. We danced barefoot in the kitchen. We mapped out a future, kids, travel, goals. But cracks began to form when comfort turned into monotony. She wanted more excitement, risk, spontaneity. I wanted stability. She wanted fire. I gave her warmth. And in her eyes, that wasn't enough. A visit from the detective. Your case is almost closed, the officer said, flipping through his notes. We confirmed there was no kidnapping. She left voluntarily. But the complaint caused enough noise. Her boss is under pressure from his board. I nodded. That was the idea. The officer raised an eyebrow. You know this could backfire if they push back legally. I'm ready, I said. I just needed time. And now I have it. He closed his notebook. Not everyone fights betrayal with strategy. Most just drown in it. I almost did, I said quietly, but then I learned how to swim. Unexpected guest. She showed up again, at my new place. I heard the knock, looked through the peephole. Her eyes were red, her lips trembling. She was soaked from the rain, hair clinging to her face. I opened the door, but didn't invite her in. I just want to talk, she whispered. Then talk. I thought he loved me, she said. But the moment it got hard, he disappeared. Blamed everything on me. Said I was unstable. I gave up everything for him, and he's already moved on. I leaned against the doorframe, unmoved. You gave up everything for yourself, not for him. She looked away. I made a mistake. No, I said, you made a choice. She looked up, finally meeting my eyes. Do you still love me? I paused, letting the silence stretch like a blade. I loved the version of you that never existed. She broke. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She turned and walked away into the rain, without another word. I didn't stop her. The days after her visit passed in an eerie stillness. Not the kind of peace you hope for after a storm, but the kind that follows an earthquake, when the dust still hangs in the air and the ground hasn't fully stopped trembling. I wasn't angry anymore. That part of me had burned out. What remained was a dull ache, a tired understanding that life would never return to what it was. And maybe that was the point. Some scars weren't meant to fade. They were meant to remind. Whispers at work. With Daniel gone, the office had begun to shift. New leadership stepped in, tentative and overly polite. Meetings felt different, less tension, but also less direction. People whispered, speculated, avoided eye contact when I walked past. I was the guy who brought down a boss. Some admired it, some feared it, and some hated me for it. But I wasn't there to make friends. I was there to rebuild, quietly and without apology. An old friend returns. It was during one of those long, silent evenings when I got a call from someone I hadn't spoken to in years, Mia, an old friend from college. We'd shared too many laughs, too many deep talks over cheap wine, and even cheaper coffee. She had heard about what happened. Small world, sharp gossip. I figured you'd either be dead inside or starting a revenge business, she said with a dry laugh. Why not both? I replied. We met for drinks the next day. It was supposed to be casual, a friendly catch-up. But there was something in the way she looked at me, a mix of concern, curiosity, and maybe something more. Are you okay? She asked after our second round. I considered lying, but my voice betrayed me. No, I admitted, but I'm better than I was. Parallel lives. Mia was a mirror, not to my past, but to what life could have looked like if it had taken a different road. She was independent, vibrant, unscarred by betrayal. But she didn't look down on me. She listened, and that, somehow, was more intimate than any touch. I told her everything. Not all at once, but over the course of several nights. She never interrupted. She never judged. When I finished, she said something I didn't expect. You were never the villain in this story. You just forgot you were allowed to be the main character. The final blow. Weeks later, the investigation into Daniel was officially closed. No charges were filed, as expected, but the damage was done. His reputation was shredded. Investors pulled out. His board let him go permanently. His name now carried the stain of scandal. Even without a conviction, he tried to reach out once. A single email. I know this was you. One day, this will come back to you. I deleted it without replying, because it already had come back to me, and I was still standing. What she lost. Rumor had it she tried to get her job back after the vacation disaster. No one wanted her. Not after the Whisper campaign. Not after Daniel's downfall. She left the city eventually. Quietly. No goodbye. No explanation. Just disappeared. Again. But this time, I didn't go looking. Because this time, I didn't need closure. I had created my own. Finding new ground. Mia and I started spending more time together. It wasn't love. Not yet. But it was safe. It was honest. There were no games. No silence laced with expectation. Just presence. She made me laugh again. She made me think again. She made me believe that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't broken beyond repair. The letter I never sent. One night, I wrote her a letter. The one who left. Not to send, just to purge. Asterisk, you taught me what love wasn't. You taught me what trust couldn't survive. But most of all, you taught me that self-respect should never be sacrificed to save a sinking ship. You abandoned me. And in doing so, you saved me from a lifetime of drowning. Thank you. Asterisk, the city never truly slept, but some nights felt quieter than others, like the world was holding its breath, waiting for something to shift. That was how my apartment felt now. Still, haunted by her absence, but no longer desperate for her return. The hole she left behind didn't shrink. I just stopped staring into it. A familiar shadow. It was late afternoon when I saw her again, not in person, but in a tagged photo online. Someone I didn't know had posted a blurry group shot on a beach. And there she was, standing off to the side, smiling, carefree, like nothing ever happened, like the past 2 years hadn't mattered. Her hand rested lightly on a stranger's shoulder. He wasn't Daniel. He looked younger, maybe richer. It didn't matter. What mattered was how easily she'd moved on, how easily she wore happiness. Like betrayal had been nothing but a skipped chapter in her book. And me? I was still trying to finish the sentence she left me with. Dinner with ghosts. I had dinner with my parents that weekend. Their attempt at normalcy. They didn't ask about her, but I could feel the weight of unspoken questions around the table. My mother glanced at the empty seat beside me more than once. My father just offered me a drink stronger than the food could handle. I always told you she was a little unpredictable, he muttered when my mother went to the kitchen. You always tell me things after they happen, I replied. He gave a sad smile. That's when wisdom usually shows up. A call from the past. Mia was the only one who asked me the hard questions. Do you still miss her? She asked, lie beside me one night. I didn't answer right away. Missing someone wasn't about wanting them back. It was about the habits that still remembered their shape. The way your hands still reach for them in sleep. The way your eyes search a room for their face out of instinct. I miss who I thought she was. I finally said. Mia didn't press. She just moved closer. Daniel's descent. Rumors about Daniel's downfall kept circulating. Apparently, he was trying to start something new, overseas, where his name didn't carry as much weight. One of his ex-assistants texted me. He says you cost him everything. I didn't reply, because I knew something he didn't. He lost everything the day he decided loyalty was optional. I just finished the story he started. Her return. 3 months after she vanished, she came back. Not a dramatic entrance. Not a midnight knock. Just a soft ding of a message request. I'm back in town. Can we talk? I stared at it for a long time. My fingers hovered over the screen like they were waiting for permission from my heart. They didn't get it. Instead, I typed, "There's nothing left to say," and blocked the number. Moving on doesn't mean forgetting. Healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet acceptance. You stop replaying old conversations. You stop imagining different outcomes. You stop hoping for apologies that won't come. You wake up, drink your coffee, and realize it doesn't taste like loss anymore. You see your reflection, and for the first time heals all wounds. You don't look like a victim. I had learned something deeper. You look like you. Time doesn't heal. Distance does. Emotional, physical, mental distance. You don't forget the cut. You just learn how to live around the scar. A stranger in my own story. There were mornings I'd wake up and forget she was gone. My mind would reach for the same routines. Texting her good morning, checking the fridge for her favorite yogurt, listening for her humming from the bathroom. But the silence always reminded me first. It was eerie how someone could vanish from your life so completely, leaving behind no trace. Only patterns and shadows that clung to your memory like smoke. Selling the house. The apartment we had shared didn't feel like home anymore. I had already cleared her side of the closet, packed away the trinkets and little souvenirs we had collected during our time together. But I needed more than a purge. I needed a clean slate. So I sold the place. To strangers. A young couple, full of excitement and future plans. Took it over. I watched them walk through what used to be my life. Laughing, measuring walls for art, talking about babies. It stung a little, but it also gave me peace. The house could finally breathe again. Distributing the ghosts. Her clothes, her books, her framed photos. I didn't want to throw them away. That would feel too cruel. So I gave them away. To shelters, to thrift stores, to anyone who needed them more than I did. I imagined some woman wearing her old coat, never knowing the story stitched into its lining. Some child reading the fairy tale books she once kept by the bed. It felt right, as if I was dismantling a shrine I never meant to build. Legal consequences. 2 weeks later, Daniel contacted me through a lawyer. He wanted to settle. Quietly. Apparently, his frozen assets were creating tension with stakeholders. His image was tarnished beyond repair. He claimed emotional distress from the accusation I'd filed. The irony was thick enough to choke on. My lawyer laughed when he saw the papers. "We're not settling," I said flatly. "You sure?" he asked. "Could be easy money." "I don't want his money. I want him to remember what it cost him. Reputation, control, comfort. Those were the things people like Daniel couldn't afford to lose. The power of story. I started journaling. Not for anyone else, just for me. The pages filled with moments, both bitter and beautiful. The words helped make sense of the chaos, helped give the pain shape, so I could eventually let it go. Sometimes I wrote about how we met, sometimes about how she looked when she lied, sometimes about the sound her voice made when she was still in love. Writing was the only way I could take control of the narrative again. An unexpected confession. One evening, Mia called me. "You need to know something," she said. I could hear the hesitation in her voice. She contacted me. My throat tightened when, last week, she wanted to know if you were seeing anyone, if you still hated her. I didn't know what to say. Mia continued. She said it wasn't about the vacation. She claimed she was scared, that you were too perfect, that she needed to destroy something before it destroyed her. I closed my eyes. I wasn't surprised, but it still hurt. Some people aren't afraid of failure. They're afraid of peace, of something that feels too good, so they break it before it breaks them. Letting go. I walked down to the ocean one night, just before midnight. I brought nothing with me, just stood there, letting the wind slice through my jacket, the cold sand biting into my shoes. And I whispered one final thing to her, into the dark, into the waves, into the wind. You were loved, deeply, fiercely, and that's more than you deserved. Then I turned around and walked away. A cold morning. The first frost of November settled like a whisper across the city. It reminded me of her, oddly enough, how she pulled her sleeves over her hands and complained that winter smelled like loneliness. Now I understood what she meant. The apartment was gone, but the memories weren't. They showed up in the strangest places, like in the scent of cinnamon from a bakery we once visited, or the sight of a scarf that looked just like hers. Absence wasn't silent. It echoed. The police follow-up. Detective Allen Call confirmed the investigation was being dropped. No evidence of foul play. No proof of kidnapping. Just a woman who disappeared on her own terms, and a man caught in the emotional wreckage. She came in, by the way, he added casually, with your boss. Gave her statement. I hesitated. How did she look? There was a pause. Tired, he said, but not guilty. I nodded silently, even though he couldn't see it. Of course she didn't look guilty. She never carried guilt like the rest of us. It rolled off her like rain on glass. The world keeps spinning. I returned to work eventually, because the world doesn't stop just because your heart breaks. People acted like nothing happened. Daniel had stepped down for health reasons, and whispers of scandal hung in the air like perfume no one could name. I kept my head down, worked late, and avoided eye contact. But one day in the elevator, someone from accounting looked at me and said softly, "Good for you." I didn't ask what she meant. Maybe it didn't matter. Maybe surviving was enough to earn quiet respect. The letter, it arrived 3 weeks later. No return address. Just my name, handwritten in looping cursive. I didn't open it right away. I stared at it for hours, then tucked it into a drawer. But the words inside burned through the envelope, whispering things I wasn't ready to hear. When I finally tore it open, I was shaking. I never meant to disappear like that. I didn't know how to tell you what I felt or didn't feel. You were too good to me, too much like a future I didn't think I deserved. Daniel made me feel dangerous. Stupid, I know. I wanted to feel wanted, not just safe. You were home, and I wasn't ready to stop running. I hope you find someone who sees a fire in you and doesn't run from a warmth. There was no apology, only explanation, and it was somehow worse. Closure isn't clean. I folded the letter back into the envelope, not sure what to do with it. Burn it? Frame it? Shred it? Instead, I tucked it between the pages of my journal. Let it live among the truths I had written for myself. She had taken enough from me. I wouldn't let her steal my peace. Too. The shift. Life has a way of sneaking up on you when you least expect it. I started smiling again at strangers, at dogs on the street, at baristas who spell my name wrong. I wasn't okay, not fully, but I was learning to be better. One night, I met someone new. Her name was Lauren. We bumped into each other reaching for the same book in a quiet bookstore. She laughed when our hands touched. "Sorry," she said. "It's a good one." It was the first time in months my heart didn't twist when I heard a woman's voice. Tiny steps. We got coffee. We talked. She didn't ask about my past, and I didn't offer. Sometimes healing begins when you stop narrating your pain and start listening to someone else's story instead. Lauren had eyes that searched for stars, even in the city haze. She believed in love, but didn't chase it. She just let it find her. It was unfamiliar, and somehow exactly what I needed. A night of no ghosts. The air was cold again. Winter settling in, just like before. But this time, the loneliness didn't weigh quite so heavy. I walked home past a bakery, past a bookstore, past the places that once hurt to remember. And for the first time, I didn't see her face in the crowd. I didn't hear her laugh in the wind. I just walked, free, unfinished shadows. Just when I thought I had stepped beyond the wreckage, the past knocked on my door. Literally. It was a Friday evening, and I had just made tea. The apartment smelled like bergamot and safety. I didn't expect anyone. I wasn't ready for anyone. So when the knock came, I hesitated. But curiosity is cruel, and I answered. There she was, Ava. The confrontation. Her hair was longer. Her eyes, those same sharp eyes that once read every part of me, were duller now, or maybe just burdened. "Can I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to. I needed to look at her and feel nothing. Small talk with ghosts. We sat in the kitchen, the one we once danced in after wine and bad decisions. She ran her fingers over the edge of the mug I gave her, the same one she used to love. She didn't drink the tea. I saw the apartment was listed. She said, "It's gone," I replied. "I figured." She paused. "Did you read the letter?" "I did." She looked down. "And I think you lied. To me. To yourself." That hit her. I saw it. A tiny flicker in her throat as she swallowed hard. Truth bleeds slowly. "I was afraid," she said eventually. "You were always solid. I wasn't. I couldn't be what you needed. You were what I wanted. Not a project. Not a rescue mission. Just you." She blinked, lips parting slightly, but no words came. I kept going. "You made me believe in forever, then ran before the end of the prologue. And then you took my future to a resort in another man's arms." Silence. "I didn't love him," she whispered, "but you chose him." She nodded, "Because he asked me to be reckless. And I wanted to see if I could be." The apology that never arrived. She never said, "I'm sorry." Instead, she said, "I think about you all the time." I stared at the chipped corner of the kitchen tile, a flaw I never fixed. "I don't," I said. That was a lie, but it was one I was allowed to tell. A new line. She left without asking for anything else. No second chances. No closure speeches. Just a quiet "take care" and the soft click of the door. When it closed, something inside me opened. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't relief. It was peace. The walk forward. Lauren and I went on our third date the next day. She wore a green scarf that made her laugh when I said it reminded me of spring. "You mean hope?" she teased. "Yeah," I smiled. "Exactly that." She talked about art and how silence in a gallery is louder than any soundtrack. I listened, and for the first time, I didn't compare. Letting go. That night, I burned the letter. Watched her words curl into smoke and vanish into the night sky. Not out of anger, but because some stories need to end before new ones can begin. A simple truth. You don't always get the apology you deserve. You don't always understand why someone leaves. But you survive. You rebuild. And one day, you stop surviving and start living. Not because the past is gone, but because you've decided to move past it. The morning after, sunlight leaked in through the blinds. Dust particles floating in the golden stream like quiet reminders of peace. I sat in bed, not thinking about her, not trying not to, just being. A whole hour passed before I reached for my phone. No messages. And for once, I didn't hope for one. The weight of closure. It's strange how closure doesn't arrive with grand declarations or confessions. It's quieter, more like an absence than an arrival. I went to my storage unit that day. The last place where pieces of our shared past still lived. An old box labeled Us. Inside, a concert ticket, a chipped photo frame, one of her scars, and a keychain from Paris we never visited. I took the box to the river and let it go. Karma's quiet return. A week later, I received an unexpected call from a former colleague of my boss. He told me the man had lost major clients after the investigation, even after it was dismissed. Whispers spread fast in elite circles. Apparently, Ava had also lost her job, blacklisted by association. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt distance, like reading about people in a newspaper. Familiar, but no longer relevant to your world. Reconnection. Laura and I sat on her rooftop, sipping wine and sharing secrets under string lights. "Do you believe people really change?" She asked. "I think they reveal who they are, eventually." She nodded slowly. "And if they regret who they were, they have to live with it. That's change." A small flame. We didn't label what we had. Not yet. But when she took my hand, it wasn't just fingers interlocking. It was trust taking root again. There were no fireworks, just warmth. And that was enough. The letter I never sent. I wrote one last letter to Ava. I didn't send it, but I'll tell you what it said. "I loved you once. Fiercely. Completely. But love doesn't survive in hiding or in betrayal. I'm done searching for answers you buried. I hope one day you forgive yourself, even if I never can. Then I burned it just like the first. The final move. I moved to a new place. Different street. Different view. No ghosts in the walls. Lauren helped me unpack. We laughed over tangled cords and mismatched socks. It felt like the beginning of something real. Something earned. A lesson written in scars. Here's what I learned. People will lie to your face while holding your hand. Pain doesn't kill you. It changes you. Revenge might feel like control, but healing feels like power. And then, peace. One night, I stood on my balcony. City lights below. Quiet above. I thought of everything. Then I thought of nothing. And smiled.